Hi friends, my name is Akil Ahmed and in this video we will see how to use the Execute SQL task in SSIS. Execute SQL task can be used to run the SQL queries on the database, and we can create any database tables, insert data into tables, run any update, insert or delete query on the tables. Let's see how we can use it. So just drag and drop Execute SQL task from SSIS toolbox into the control flow window, and maybe we can rename it work with SQL queries. Okay, so if you right click and edit the execute SQL task, so there are mainly three major options that we can modify here right now for now. So the important one is connection type. So we can use execute SQL task for different purposes. We can use for ADO.NET as well. We can use it for creating or deleting a sheet from Excel file as well, but for now, for this video, we will keep it OLDB. So an OLDB connection type we can use to connect to a SQL Server database table. Okay, and under the connection we can create a connection which can be used to connect to a SQL Server, and then we can provide the database name as well. So we can connect to any database table. Okay, and then the most important option is SQL statement. So we can write our SQL query here, which will run on the SQL Server itself. I have written a simple create table query here, and is insert statement here. So if you look at this particular query, so we are checking if person table doesn't exist in the SQL Server database, then it will create a person table which with an ID as an identity column, and name as varchar, and gender as a char one, and the age as an integer value. And this particular query, if you will run, will create a person table which doesn't exist at the testing database, and then it will insert a single record into the person table. So we will going to run this particular query through execute SQL task in SSIS. So just copy the statement here from here, and then open the go back to the SQL Server data tools. So first of all we need to create a connection to the testing database. So click new connection, and the connection was already there, so let's work from scratch. So click new to create a new connection, then type the server name here, which is Ahmad, and then the database name is testing. You can click connection is successful, then click OK. So our connection has been created. Click OK. So the connection has been created here, and now we need to write the SQL statement here. So just open the SQL statement query window, and then paste the query here. So this particular query will run on the SQL Server. Click OK. Okay, so we have configured our execute SQL task to run the basic SQL query on the Microsoft SQL Server. So just execute the package from here by clicking on the start button. So this should create a table and should insert a record into the database table. Okay, so the package ran successful, and then refresh the table. So you will find a person table here, and it should have one records. Okay, so one record has also been inserted into the table. So this was the very basic use of execute SQL task. Okay, now we can also use our execute SQL task to run some dynamic queries as well. So just copy this particular code, click OK, and then as we have different columns here like name, gender, and age. ID is an identity column, so it doesn't need any input value, while these three columns need an input value. So we will create three SSIS variables, and then we will provide the values of these three columns from SSIS variable itself. So just right click in the control flow, and then go to the variables. So here we can create our SSIS variables. So click here to create a new variable, and the first variable we can name as name, and the data type of this variable will be string, and the value for now we can say ram. And then we can create another variable gender, and the value will be a string and it can be m. And the third one, we can create an age and the string, and then maybe we can put 30. Okay, so okay, so let's change the age to m32. Okay, because it's an integer value. So now we have created three variables here. So we will see how we can provide the values from these three variables to the execute SQL task, and it can be inserted to a SQL Server table. So let's open this particular query. Okay, and then change the these values like Abhishek within comma, question mark, sorry, question mark, and M with a question mark, and 35 with a question mark. So these three question marks basically denotes that the values for these three parameter, the values for these three question mark will be provided by in parameter. Okay, so click OK, then go to the parameter mapping, and then we can map a parameter here for these three, for those three columns. Okay, so like click on add. So the first parameter was the name, so we can choose the name from here, select name using the name SSIS variable. Direction will be input, as we are providing the value to the execute SQL task, and the data type will be varchar. Okay, and the new parameter name, it will be 0, and let the parameters size to its default value. Okay, so now we have created a SSIS parameter for the name column. Now create another parameter for the gender column. So it direction will be input, and it will be varchar as well, and the parameter number will be 1, because the very first parameter will be 0, second one will be 1, and the third one will be 2. So add another one as well, so we can add for age, and okay, so we can keep it as long because it's a numeric value, and then put it to here. Okay, so we have set the parameters here. So let's execute the package, and now the value should be inserted as ram male, and the age value. So put the value as 30. Okay, okay, click on the start button, and this should execute the current SSIS package. We should SSIS variable. Okay, so the package got completed, and let's see, now we should have two records in the table. So the package has executed, and it has inserted the dynamic values ram and gender male, and the age as 30. So this is how we can provide the dynamic values to the execute SQL task. Okay, now we can also write the dynamic queries from another option as well. So let's see how we can use some other option as well. Okay, so just copy the query into the clipboard, and then remove these parameter mapping from here. Okay, and go to the expressions, go to the click on the eclipse, and go to the SQL statement source property, and go to the expressions here, and now under the double quotes paste the query here. So you can pass the values from the SSIS variable you know here in this query. So the first column was the name, so we can refer the SSIS variable name here. Just drag and drop the name here, and then another column is the gender, so we will refer the gender column here. Okay, and the third column is the age, so we will refer the age column here. You notice that for gender and name column, as those are the string columns, so we have used a single quotes for the double quotes, and even after the double quotes we have used a single quote, because in SSIS, in the SQL server, we put the varchar or n varchar value under the single quotes, and then put the each column here. So remember, whenever we will be using the integer columns, integer SSIS variables in the expression, we need to typecast those integer column or another some other data type column to the string column. So those can be used in the expression language. So to do that, type dtn underscore wtstr and then comma 12, and so you can click on the evaluate expression to make sure that the expression is successful. So if the expression will be successful, then it will be pass successfully, otherwise it will throw an error. For example, if you remove the double quotes and if you will try to pass the expressions, put the double quotes back here, then click on evaluate expression. So now click OK. Okay, okay. So maybe we can change them now. We can give like Ahmed, and then maybe 32. Okay. So you can also execute the package now. So this should also insert a record into the SSIS, into the SQL Server table. So just execute the query again. So it has inserted one more record into the SQL Server table. So this was one way of executing the query from the execute SQL task. We have another option as well, that you can create a string variable, for example query, and then select the data type as string, and under the expression, you can change it to from evaluate expression from false to true, and then under the expressions you can write your SQL query here. Okay, so we will copy the query from here, from expressions you can copy the query from here, and then you can paste the query into the expression option. Okay, so you can paste it here, evaluate expression, so the query is successful, click OK. So you can change the values again. For example, you can name it Jyoti, female, and maybe 25. Okay, so then you can remove that SQL. You can remove the values SQL statement source from here, and then instead of executing this query, what you can do, from SQL statement source type you can change the value from direct input to the variable, and under the source variable you can choose the SQL query variable. So execute SQL task will actually execute the query from this query variable. So we have a query variable which has some SQL statement source inside it. So our SSIS package will actually execute the SQL query from this particular variable. So if you will execute this SSIS package, so it will insert a record into the SQL Server table, like Jyoti, and some value. Okay, so you can write your queries like this as well. And we have one more option of running the dynamic queries. Okay, so for example, we had a query, we had this particular query. Okay, so we may also put this particular query, and we may inst you know we may store this particular query in a SQL server, SQL, in any either text file or in a SQL file, and then we can execute that query through the SSIS package. So maybe we can have the query as person query. Okay, and then it can be dot SQL. You can write your own query here, or you can put the query here. So maybe you can change the values. For example, with Mukesh. Okay, and the name will be M and the age will be 20. Okay, so this is the SQL query that that has been stored in the person query. So you can write n number of queries here. You can, this particular file can be very huge, and you can execute the queries from this particular file from SSIS package. So what you need to do is just edit the execute SQL task, and under the SQL statement, from the SQL source type, change it from variable to file connection, and then make a connection to that particular SQL file. Okay, person query. Okay, okay, okay. So now this particular, the execute SQL task will actually execute all the code from that particular, file. Okay. So when we run the package runs successfully, and it should have inserted one more record, Mukesh, mail to 20. So guys, in this video we have seen how we can use execute SQL task to run the queries, like as maybe as hard coded queries, or some dynamic queries as well. So thanks guys for watching the video, and if you like the video, then please hit the like button and do subscribe to our channel to see more videos on SSIS and other technologies. Thank you.